You know what comes to my mind when I read the story of Moses and the burning bush is the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that is exposed, pierced, and burning. I think of it as a story about God opening his heart to Moses. And what Moses sees is a fire that does not get consumed. The revelation that we get about God here is actually a little bit shocking for me. It is not our typical idea of an almighty God who just says a word and it happens instantly. Yung katulad ng, let there be light, and there was light. It is not about a God who is just sitting comfortably in heaven and watching us. It is rather about a God who is involved in the lives of his people. A God who is affected. A God who suffers. And by the way, that is unthinkable for the Greeks, that God would suffer. Seeing the suffering of people who are treated with cruelty by their fellow human beings. And I find it even more shocking that God is practically expressing to Moses that he feels helpless about this, that he needs the help, he needs the cooperation of Moses in order to liberate the Israelite people. You need a good imagination in order to appreciate a story like this. Kaya lang, for some people, I don't know why, but for some people, imagination is negative. They tend to equate it with fantasy or with things that are untrue or unreal. As in, oh, imahinasyon mo lang yan. That is just a figment of your imagination. People who think this way are not in the proper disposition for God's revelation. Believe me, many times God will use your own imagination to reveal himself. In our gospel today, Jesus thanks the Father for revealing himself to the childlike and not to the learned. You know, these words remind me of the great scientist, Albert Einstein. May sinabi si Albert Einstein, sabi niya, imagination is greater than knowledge. You know, Einstein believes that compared to knowledge, which is limited, imagination has no limit. He says, imagination encircles the world. Remember what I told you a few days ago about a boy who watched as his grandfather carved a lion out of a piece of wood. And how he was so amazed. And he asked, grandfather, Lolo, how did you know that there was a lion in the wood? And how the grandfather said, before he saw the lion in the wood, he saw it first in his heart. Meaning, he imagined it first. Kung walang imagination, another person would probably see nothing in a piece of wood, kundi panggatong. Without imagination, Moses would not have encountered God in the burning bush. He would probably have looked for water instead to put off the fire. O kung nabuhay siya sa 21st century, he would have looked for a fire extinguisher if he saw a burning bush. Let us go back to Moses now. Yesterday, I told you, this man had run away from Egypt. He was escaping because he did not like what he was feeling at each time he saw the sufferings of the slaves. Parang may nararamdaman siyang apoy sa kanyang kalooban. Even to the point of getting violent and murderous towards the oppressors. The story of Moses leaving Egypt and finding his peace in Midian is like another version of the story of the prophet Jonah, the reluctant prophet, running away. The author of the book of Exodus is telling us how God would reveal himself through Moses' own imagination, how he would make him see, he would make him hear God's heart by confronting that which he felt was burning in his own heart. It took a lot of imagination, even for the first disciples of Jesus, to see the Christ, the Son of God, in that Jesus, the carpenter rabbi from Nazareth, whose heart was also aflame with passion for the last, the least, and the lost. In the 1960s, one of the songs that became popularized by the trio Peter, Paul, and Mary, was the song entitled A Man from Egypt. Sabi nung kanta nila, which is about Moses, there is a man coming to Egypt, and Moses is his name. When he saw the grief upon us, in his heart there burned a flame. In his heart there burned a flame, O Lord. In his heart there burned a flame. When he saw the grief upon us, in his heart there burned a flame. When you see the grief and the affliction of the people around you, and you don't feel any fire burning in your guts, maybe it means you have learned much about God, but have never really encountered God in person. Or it could mean that God's heart is hidden to us because we have become too learned, or we have lost our childlike imagination.